This is Will Spencer from the Renaissance of Men, here with the new 21 report and Suzanne Venker. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for being here.
Sure.
You spoke at the 22 convention. What was the title of your talk?
It was, "It's Time to End America's Gender War."
Oh, wow, okay. So what were some of the subjects I can imagine that you covered in that conversation?
So I opened up talking about the piece that I wrote in 2012 for Fox News called "The War on Men," which ended up going viral because feminists got a hold of it and had apoplexy, and that caused it to go viral. And so that was kind of a whirlwind experience. And I sort of piggybacked off from there and talked about how far we've come, how far we haven't come, how far we've devolved in the last 40 years when it comes to men and women, the relationship between them, and really with a focus on what's happening with men and how if men fall behind, then women fall behind too. And there's just not, whenever you hear about men, what's happening with them in society in terms of, for instance, the fact that they're not going to colleges at the same rate as women, and they're not working at the same rate and all of that, that's going to hurt everybody. It's not just them. So it's not like something not to worry about. And so I kind of connected that with marriage rates and why the marriage rates have plummeted and why men are opting out, and now women are having babies outside of marriage because they basically can't find husbands, and why that is.
Yeah, I talked to Eric Carroll a little bit ago, and he was dealing with the family court system and the divorce industry and how that's disincentivizing men from getting married as well. It's horrible.
It is. I don't get into any of that, but I understand. It's all the same, different angles of the same issue.
Talk a little bit about that 2012 experience. Were you surprised that you went viral, or surprised by the reaction?
I had been dealing with pushback before. That wasn't kind of my first rodeo, but I opened the speech with the subject line that I received as a result of that going viral that said, "Please kill yourself." And
tolerant.
so I would say that was pretty striking. I haven't had anything like that before or since, but I wanted to show the level of vitriol at the mere suggestion that something's going on with men and women, but starting with men because it was called "The War on Men." And how dare I even go there when that's not the narrative? So I'm upsetting the narrative. And that's, wow, that's just so deep as to, could you imagine actually writing that in a subject line and then actually hitting send?
Yeah, but I have to imagine myself being pretty mentally ill.
Yeah.
And so this is your first time at the 21 Summit, 21 Convention. What have been some of your impressions? Let's talk about the 22 Convention. What have been your impressions of the women who were there?
They're awesome. I mean, it's been really fun. It's an eclectic group, and I love how they're all very different, but they have this commonality, in loving men and women and not being afraid to talk out against the feminist narrative, which can be a lonely job, if you're a woman especially, because you're for a man too, but it's a lot harder for a man to do it. You almost wonder whether it's worse or better for a man or a woman to call it out, because we're all misogynists if we do, but we're a traitor to our own sex, whereas you're just you're just over there. I don't know.
Typical male.
Right.
I don't know. Sometimes I think women can have an extra degree of viciousness to each other.
True.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe it's
Good
almost
point.
worse for you, right? I mean, I guess you might say genetically bred to be a warrior and to take it, but women aren't quite bred the same way.
No,
Maybe
they're not. I think that's why there are fewer of us, because you definitely have to have thick skin. There's no question about that. But I've kind of moved away from that whole scene from 2012. So I was talking about that in the talk as well, that I'm kind of done fighting feminists in the public sphere. And I have a podcast, the Suzanne Venker Show, and I do relationship and marriage coaching. So that's really where my attention is today, is helping individuals be successful in their marriages and relationships when they're fighting this huge narrative that is steering them this way. And I'm over here saying, hey, you don't have to do it that way. There's another way. And here's how it looks, which gets into the masculine, feminine dynamic and all of that. So that's what I do on a weekly basis.
Oh, and so do men and women call into your show, or for the people watching?
No, I don't have call-ins.
Oh, okay. So it's sort of like introducing them to speakers and authors like that who speak to these issues?
So on the show, it was actually originally a local radio show in the Midwest where I'm from. And then that devolved, and we're now just strictly a podcast. So it's been a couple of years, and I had a guest on every week, and just recently have gone out on my own, and just going to be having guests periodically. But that's still very new, and it just moved from once a week to 3 times a week. So it's me solo now, 3 short podcasts or 3 short episodes. But I do have a lot of emails and questions and comments that I'm constantly collecting that are like, yay, hi. So I will take time to sit there and answer them that way. So it's not a call-in, but you can ask a question through email and I'll answer it.
So for the people watching and listening, short like 30 minutes, short like an hour, 15 minutes?
30 or less.
30 or less?
Yep, they were an hour every week, and now it's 30 minutes and then like 15 and 15, sometimes a little longer.
Did you find that the women here, oh, go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, some people love that, some people don't. They should be longer. They should be shorter.
Right.
Yeah, I can't win.
You can't make everybody happy, right? So did you find that the women here, did they know who you were? Had they heard of your work?
They seemed to. That was great.
Oh,
yeah.
wow. Have you gotten the chance to interact with some of the men who are attendees of the 21 convention as well?
Yeah.
What has that been like for you?
Yeah, they're great. I mean, it's nice to know that they've got a space to talk openly about their experiences and who they are, and without being shamed. You know, I talked about that in the talk, men, about being shamed for being male, and you're supposed to change who you are to keep up with the times, rather than our understanding the differences between women and men, and appreciating and loving how wonderful men are if you just know how to bring out the best in them. So that's kind of what I do on a weekly basis. That's who I am. That's what I do today.
Well, how do you bring out the best in me? No, really. Like, we were talking before the cameras started rolling about Alison Armstrong and her book, The Queen's Code, how that, for me as a man, reading that, how it taught me so much about myself. And Alison has actually said that, she set out to write a book for women about men, and she didn't expect that would benefit so many men in reading it. So you must have had the same experience.
I have had the same.
Oh,
and
that's so awesome.
It's been really fascinating, because I'd say my audience is pretty much now 50-50 men and women.
Really?
Yeah. And I do marriage coaching, but I do it individually.
Sure.
I do work mostly with wives, but I definitely work with husbands as well. And even single men who are trying to figure out whether they should marry the person they're dating, that kind of thing. And what's nice is that my YouTube channel, I'm out there now enough to, by the time people get with me for coaching, they know what I'm about.
Sure.
You know, and it's very helpful to have those two working side by side. But yeah, hearing from the men is like, can I give, like the alpha, I was telling you about my book, The Alpha Female's Guide to Men in Marriage. And I'll have men, asking me, how do I get my wife to read this? Can I strategically put it by her bed? That kind of bedside. And yeah, a lot of that I wasn't expecting when I first wrote it, which, gosh, talk about a window into what's happening. I mean, I just got slammed from seeing how pervasive this dynamic was of the over masculinized woman and what men do with that, which is a combination of either fighting back, and hence the conflict and the power struggle, or the retreating. There's just and then not knowing, who's to blame or who's to fault or how to fix it. And then when I come along and sort of teach women the skills to do that, they're just like, I've never heard this before, and they see how quickly it works, which is really just speaking to what motivates a man, and making him feel superfluous is not it.
No, that's not the way
that's not the way. Or nagging and complaining and So if you could sum up what I do with the coaching, is basically helping wives not do and being softer and kinder and gentler with their approach.
And so when women go through that process, what are some of the things they usually say to you at the end of the process?
Well, they'll tell me, I guess the running theme is, I just can't believe how quickly that worked. Wow. It's not like losing 100 pounds where you have to wait 3 or 4 months to see action. It's immediate. And when they get that, then it's that much easier for them to keep it up. And then they're just sort of like, why have I never heard this before? And that gets into, well, you've been living in a you go girl world, and you can do no wrong, and men are trying to hold you down. So all your defenses are up. You're just coming at it all wrong, and you and everybody else. It's not like you're unusual. And I don't really blame them, actually. They've been cultivated in that way.
So what happens when women get to that point? Why didn't anybody tell me this? where do they go from there? Because as men, I know, men have answers like, why didn't anyone tell me this? And we start getting into the deeper sociocultural reasons. The men go there, but do women go there as well? Do they start asking those questions?
We don't get into that. We don't really. They know what it is. Like every fourth coaching session, something will come up like, well, that's feminism for you, or, the culture did that. That's all. But no, we don't talk about it much. We're really honed in on their individual relationship.
Experience.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
But they all end up, they all are kind of on the same. You wouldn't have a strident feminist calling me for marriage help.
Probably not.
They're not even married, But if they were, I'm sure. There are feminists who are married.
Sure, yeah,
but they wouldn't reach out to me.
Right.
So you can kind of, by the time they've all been sort of vetted in their own way by knowing what I'm about before they call. And you have to be open and ready to try something that's very countercultural and desperate, really, to save your marriage, to work with me.
That's when they come to you, when they're desperate?
They kind of do.
Wow.
And that's not fun. That's not what I meant. It is unfortunate. It's not how I meant it to be. But I have to say 75%, for not the single people, people who are married, 75% of them are there, but they're not to the point of like, well, I had one who was separated, just about to separate. And I was like, I can't help you if you're separated because you've got to be in the house ready to, and he separated for 3 months, came back, then she called, and they were all in, or she was all in to make a change, and several months later, they're still going great. So my point is, unless you're all in, if you have one foot out the door, I'm not going to be much help to you. You really have to want it. I can't make anybody want something, but I can show you how to get there if you do.
I think that's very hopeful that there are some women, because it would be easy to get kind of nihilistic and be like, women don't want to be married and they just want to kick their husbands to the curb, but there are some women that want to stay married to their husbands.
And I
feel silly saying that.
Well, there's so much negativity about how women are today, and I'm part of that. I get that. I just have a lot more sympathy because I truly believe it's not their fault. They were groomed this way by the generation of women before them. If you want to blame someone, it should be them. You can only reap what you sow, and they've been raised by all their own mothers and the culture to think of men as lesser beings, and
put it mildly.
Yeah. And so it's a real massive mind shift to work with me, and you just have to be willing and ready. Yeah.
Have you gotten the chance to listen to any male speakers of the 21 Convention of the Patriarchs?
I'm sorry. I've seen him on the channel in the past, but no, not this time.
Anyone that stands out?
A little bit of Anthony's I did when we first came in. That's it. What have
been your impression of the conference overall? I guess this is your first time here.
It is. The dinners were great. Everything. It was nice to get to know people in really, really varied backgrounds. Very cool.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your book, How to Get Hitched and Stay Hitched, which I saw this sitting on the book table out there, and I flipped it open. I was like looking at the table of contents. I was like, oh, this is great. I have to read this.
Yeah, let's look at the table of contents. Actually give it away, which is good. It's very helpful.
I have to read the table of contents?
I have to read my own. What did I say in my table of contents?
I can read it.
So I start out with the 4 lies the culture tells. That's part 1.
Yeah.
And then part 2 was the 12-step program, which is basically, imploding the lies and saying this is the wrong way to think and to live, and this is the way. And when I say wrong, I mean assuming you want to get married and have a family and be happy. Right. I'm not trying to tell people what to do. I'm just saying if this is the plan that you have, following the culture isn't going to get you there. You need a new one. So that's the purpose of this book. So it's everything. Starts from living an examined life, and that basically means being countercultural instead of following, and then it goes through the different steps. Yeah. Do you want me to go through them?
No.
That'd be a lot.
Yeah, men can. Well, where can men look up online? Okay.
Amazon. You could just Google the title.
Yeah.
And you'll find it very quickly.
So, you mentioned earlier, men had asked you, how can I get my wife to read this? Like, do you actually have any advice for that? Because, I recommend Allison's books because I'm familiar with them. It's like, but men ask me, I say, you got to read this to understand yourself. And if you want to help positively affect your marriage, maybe try and get your wife to read it. Like, I have no idea how to get my wife to read this.
It's a hard question to answer, to be honest, because at the end of the day, a person really neither husband nor wife or man nor woman or person to person can help someone else change. They have to be looking and be ready and open.
Lead a horse to water.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. So there isn't an easy answer for that, easy way to do that. Except maybe mention offhandedly, oh, I met someone and sounded really interesting. And this is, instead of, here, read this book,
That's
you have to
probably
be,
not.
you have to be a little more strategic.
Probably not gonna work. Well, so talk more about your podcast and some of the issues that are coming up now, because it seems like the conflict is only growing, but I know that underneath that, men and women are actually finding their way back together, and that this conference is an example of that.
Yeah. So it's called The Suzanne Venker Show. Creative, right? Yeah.
I like it. Straight to the point.
And it covers, I try to cover things that come up in the news sometimes if they're related to this issue, which that's not hard to find on a weekly basis. But generally, I'm basically taking a lot of what I'm seeing in my coaching and trying to bring it to the world via the podcast, so that more than just the couple I'm working with see, not just hear about what's happening if they can relate, but also what to do about it. So some of those skills, like I did a video recently. Well, I guess this is a video, not a podcast, but they are interchangeable, sort of. 6 things women need to know about men.
Oh, I want to know what those are.
And that's still doing really well. I think it's like there's almost like 30,000 views on that now. That's well for me.
That's great.
I'm not really a YouTube person. I'm more of, the podcast and the coaching is my main focus, but we do have the YouTube channel, and we do put the podcast on the YouTube channel 3 times a week. I don't remember what I said now.
No, it's okay. The 6
I wrote it.
things
I did it a couple of weeks ago. I do so much content I can't remember.
That's great.
Sweet talk and bottom lines. Men like sweet talk and bottom lines. Like, get to the point.
Yes.
Not long-winded.
Can
and
confirm.
be sweet. Don't be an ass. That was one of them. I'm totally freezing.
That's totally fine.
Look up. Everybody can look up 6 things women need to know about men on my YouTube channel, and you'll find it there.
That's wonderful. Do you plan to stick around for the next day or so, or check out the rest of the
I'm leaving in the morning. I'm having dinner tonight.
Okay.
And then I'm leaving in the morning.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. I'm grateful that you were here to share with the women and to meet with the men and tell them what's going on with men and women. It doesn't have to go the way the culture says.
Definitely not. Not if you want to win. Not if you want to win at it. Win at love. Win at the game of love.
Win at the game of love.
If you want to call it that.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Suzanne.
Thank you.
It's great.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. This is Will Spencer from the Renaissance of Men here with the new 21 Report and Suzanne Venker. Thanks so much.